everybody, welcome back. This is Excel video 290, and I'm Nate Moore. Spent some time today helping a group that was trying to track down their lag days, trying to figure out how long it was taking by provider, by location, to get their bills in. We found some interesting trends over time when we went back a couple of years. When you're ready to look at your lag days and understand what's going on in your practice, I'd love to help you. We're still playing with slicers. Today I'm back to the collections data set we started with, and we're going to set up another slicer. So if I go, again, I'm under the options menu and insert slicer, and we will do, let's just do diagnosis, because what I want to do is when you set up a slicer tools menu shows up over here. And what I want to do is walk through some of the formatting options that you can do with slicers to make them look just the way you want. And maybe we'll start here at slicer styles and work our way to the right. From the drop down, there are several different styles to choose from. Darker ones and lighter ones that you can just pick a color and match whatever you're trying to do. Maybe it helps to be consistent, so every pivot table you do, the slicer for doctors is always red and the slicer for locations is always green. However you want to do it, there are a bunch of preset styles and you can create your own styles with slicers. Once you've set the style, what you can do is you can change the columns like this. So if I want to make it 3 columns wide and then say, I need to go a little bit wider, I can do something like that. You can change the height and width this way of the buttons, or you can change the height and width on the size of the slicer that way. But typically what I'll do is just kind of drag more or less what I want. Say, shoulders isn't quite big enough. Maybe what I'll do is go to 2 columns, or I can go to 4 columns and I'll drag it out like this and make it thin. Something like that. Whatever you want to do. It's easy to format slicers with these tools here. Slicer settings. You can change the name of the slicer. Right now it's diagnosis. You can do something like that, and something like this to display the header and change that. You can change the way they sort. You can use custom lists to make them show up in the order you want. Last time we talked about visually indicate items with no data and show the items that don't have any data. Remember when we had the states and there was no data in some states because we'd filtered Louisville and Atlanta? You can make those show up last. You can even show items that have been deleted from the data source. That's one I typically turn off. If the data is no longer in the data source because you've changed the name of the physician or you no longer use that CPT code after all these years or whatever, I typically turn that off. And there it is in diagnosis. Last thing is pivot table connections. And without going to the menu, because I only have one pivot table, one of the great tricks with a slicer is this. If you have 4 pivot tables and you want them all to switch to the same doctor, before slicers you had to go to pivot table number 1 and say, okay, which doctor? I want it to be Dr. Rook, and do that 3 more times. What you can do with a slicer, when I click on the slicer, go to options and pivot table connections, you can connect one slicer to multiple pivot tables. So back to my 4 pivot table example, what you can do is click Dr. Rook or eyes or whatever it is you want to filter by on one slicer and all your pivot tables go and update automatically. It's really a slick trick. And then when you're done with your slicer and you've got everything you need, you want to get rid of it, highlight it and click delete, you're done. Pretty clever tricks, cool things with slicers. And there's how to format them, and I hope that was helpful for you. Thanks for watching.